The crafter is here. That is right. Automated crafting is now available in the actual game of Minecraft. It is not just on a screen, it is actually in the game. I am playing on the development build, snapshot build, or preview build. Right now I'm in the Bedrock edition, but I may switch into the Java edition later. But this has now been added into the actual game of Minecraft. I can click it, I can see it, I can use it. So I'm gonna teach you everything so far that we know about the crafter. This is in development, so I hope nothing will change, but there's always the risk that things change in the future. So let's take a look at this block. This is what it looks like. This is automated crafting in Minecraft. It has sort of a crafting grid on the top, two little redstone sort of lamps on the side. If I activate it, you can see that those actually turn on. So right here, I actually have a little clock here so I can make it kind of go over and over and over. You can see that that red is, it's trying to make something, but it is not. There's also a really quiet sound here on Bedrock Edition. On Java Edition, there is no sound, but you can kind of hear it past the button. That like a, it almost sounds like a fox or something. It's a little weird. You'll also notice when it actually has stuff in it and can actually craft. Let's just have it, we're gonna have it craft some sticks. So it can craft these sticks when it actually outputs something. The little front sort of opens up. This little, like it's almost like a lever that moves up to the top, and the grid actually becomes powered with redstone. When there is nothing, it doesn't do that. So we can see that again. As it outputs something, that little grid on the top actually lights up, which is kind of cool. And this mouth piece, it definitely looks like the observer or like the furnace, how it kind of has a mouth. It looks kind of cool. It opens up and ejects your items. Just like a crafting table, it has a 3x3 grid inside. But unlike a crafting table, I actually cannot grab the recipe. I cannot grab the output with my hand. I have to use redstone in order to power the craft and actually get it to make the item that's in the craft. There are these slots and they are toggleable, so you can turn them on and off. And that is useful later when we get into using hoppers and whatnot, because if there wasn't a slot that needs to be empty, this is really the best way to make it empty whenever you're using hoppers. So you can turn these slots off so that hoppers won't accidentally put items into them, and we'll get into hoppers and all that stuff later. Now, I will say that the crafter does have some behavior stuff that you need to know about. One is that it will craft on the beginning of a redstone signal or the pulse. So it does not need continuous redstone. So if I hit this button, basically the first time that it's getting that redstone, it is creating the craft. On the back of this build, I have a little clock set up, so when I flip this switch, you can see that it goes around and around and around, and I can slow that clock down if I want, but that means that every time that the clock goes off, it will craft that item, and the signal does not have to stay on. It is just the start pulse of that signal. The crafter is orientated on the direction that you place it. So when you put it in the world, it will be facing you. This is what the back of the crafter looks like. This is what the bottom. Oh, it actually has a really cool bottom. Oh, I forgot. It can be placed on its side. It can be placed kind of in any direction that you want. It can be placed fully upside down. No, I guess it always looks at you. But that's actually a really, really cool design. If we wanted to make a cool little wall out of it, that's kind of neat. That looks neat. Anyway, you can place it in any direction. That's really good because the front of this will act like a dropper. So as it creates the items, it's basically a dropper dropping those items. And droppers act differently than dispensers, especially when you're using them with hoppers. A dispenser will still dispense the item into the side of a dispenser, and it's an item in the world, where a hopper will drop it into the item it's in front of without ever touching the world. So it just goes from one inventory to the next. Give you a little example of what I'm talking about. The dispenser dispenses sticks, the new crafter will dispense sticks, and the dropper will all dispense sticks. But if they are going into a hopper like so, the dispenser will dispense them onto the ground. See that? But the crafter and the dropper will dispense them into the actual hopper that's in front of them. and that didn't happen with the dispenser. So you can see why that is useful. Okay, enough of that. Let's get into actually how to craft one. If you're on Java Edition right now, the crafting recipe has not been unlocked, but here on Bedrock Edition, it is. Hopefully this will not change. This is the current recipe. You will need 5 iron ingots, 1 crafting table, 2 redstone, and 1 dropper. So here is all of the ingredients. I'm just gonna kind of grab them over. If you are trying to remember how to make a dropper, it is very, very simple. All you have to do is take 7 cobblestone, put it in a pants shape, and then put redstone in between, and then you get a dropper. And once again, here is the crafting recipe for the crafter. You need 1 dropper in the middle, and then redstone on either side, and that is how you get the crafter. Let's talk a little bit about some of the behavior changes with the crafter. And I mentioned hoppers because you're gonna wanna automate your crafting. Obviously, you're gonna wanna automate your crafting. How are you gonna do that? With droppers and hoppers, but those work a little bit differently with the crafter, so you have to keep this behavior in mind. Here's what you are used to, okay? So here we have a whole bunch of diamonds, blocks of diamonds. We have a hopper. I have gone ahead and locked this hopper with a lever. So when this redstone lamp turns off, then this will be unlocked and it will start moving items through, and it'll move items over to this chest. So I'm gonna go ahead and unlock it now. You'll notice that there's a block of diamond in here. It's constantly pulling and pushing, and so you can see in this chest, it starts to fill up the chest. What behavior are we seeing? We are seeing that it finds the first empty slot and it fills it all the way to the brim. We're gonna get to an entire stack of diamond blocks before it moves on to the next open and empty slot. That is not how it works with the crafter, okay? If that same behavior worked, right, we would get, this is the same situation, we got the hopper, it's locked, and we have the blocks of diamond, okay? If that same thing happened, we'd get 1 item in this first slot, and then it would fill to 64, right? It would fill to a full stack. That's exactly what we saw over here. But over here, when we unlock this hopper and we open, you'll notice that the blocks of diamond do not just go into the first slot and start counting up to 64. They look for the smallest slot available and then fill from there. So right here, this is 5. It saw a 4, so it moves and it fills that in. And then it goes from the top left-hand side to the bottom right-hand side. So it's almost like reading a page if you're an English speaker. So that is the behavior that is very different, and that can help us out a lot when we are trying to build recipes. Because if we are trying to build something, you know, let's say I'm trying to build a torch, right? The first thing is going to need to be some coal. The next block is going to be a stick, and you can turn off all the other things. And as long as you get a coal and then a stick in your, in the outflow of items, that will make the item that you want. This can be very, very complicated because let's give the example of like one of the most complicated crafting items in the game, a cake. Okay, this is the crafting recipe for a cake. You need 3 milk, you need 2 sugar, an egg, and wheat, and it has to be in this exact order. If we come over to the crafter and then just like willy-nilly throw these things in here, it's not gonna work. You need to make sure that the recipe is absolutely perfect and that everything is in order, because if one thing is out of order, your whole thing is gonna be broken. What does that mean for us? Well, if we are trying to use a chest here, we're gonna need to make sure that the milk gets put in the chest first and in the correct order. Then we need the sugar, the egg, the sugar, and then we need to make sure that we have 3 wheat at the end. So you can see how tedious this becomes. If I unlock the hopper, you'll see our items going through the hopper. They end up in the crafter in the correct way, and that means that if I wanted to, I could activate the crafter, and you'll notice that it outputs not only the cake, but the 3 buckets, because now our buckets of milk have been turned into normal buckets, and it shoots them out. So if you ever have any extra items in your crafting recipe, then it's going to fire those extra items when it's done crafting the recipe. It keeps nothing in its inventory, so you gotta keep that in mind. Okay, I wanna build some very basic things using the crafter so that you can get a better idea on how to perform some basic crafting, and you can use use this in your worlds however you want. So we're going to start off with just plain old shears. So how are we going to set up the crafter? It's pretty simple. We're going to disable all of the slots except for the 2 slots that is going to have some iron in it. This is a great recipe because every type of item in the recipe is one. It's just one type of item. It's just the iron ingots. So we can just set up a hopper with iron ingots just going into the side. And then you have a chest full of extra iron ingots. And as it puts the iron ingots, it puts it into the only 2 slots that it can. If one of these extra slots was open, it's just going to go crazy and try to fill it. And we want to turn that off real fast. Remember, you have to have nothing in your hand in order to turn off items. So we can turn that off, and there we go. So now, every time that I activate this crafter, I've put the item frame directly on its face, so you can't see the face anymore. But every time we activate the crafter, we are going to get a pair of shears as a result. This super basic setup with only one type of ingredient, the iron ingot in this case, this type of setup is so simple, and you can expand this in tons of different ways. And remember, you don't need the whole hopper setup. You can just use the inventory of the crafter itself. And so if you wanted to, you can make bread like this. You don't even need to disable these slots if they're all in the right orientation. And then you can just spam this a whole bunch of times. Remember, you can't just grab it as an output. So using this one simple type of recipe where your input is all the same item, so simple, okay? So I hope you have a good idea. This could be used to make armor. It can make wool. We'll see a whole bunch of different ways where just one item input, output, all you really need is a hopper and a chest, and you can make those all day long. Although, because items do stack and because of how hoppers work, you can make more complicated items, like this sword. The sword requires 2 different types of ingredients, an iron ingot and a stick. And if we just use the hopper in the right way, we can make sure that it will put these items in the right place. So we have this hopper, and we've made sure that the hopper contains both sticks and iron ingots, and it is full. We don't want any extra empty open slots like that. We want this to be full of stuff. And so as long as the chest above it stays relatively stocked, you can just make this over and over and over again, and the hopper is smart enough to move from one item to the other. As long as you don't make more than 64 of these items in a row, you'll notice the iron is very low, but it's already filling up. The sticks are even lower. It hasn't gotten a chance to fill those up yet, but once it does, it will. And we have our items. They're just doing great. We get full on sticks and on iron. Once the iron is done, it moves on to the sticks, fills that up. So as long as you're not making a stack of items, you know, faster than the hopper can refill this crafter, if you're just doing this once or twice, this very simple setup, because of how items stack, can be easily used to automate your crafting. Okay, next one. This is kind of a fun one. If you are trying to craft a ton of any one type of item, sometimes automated crafting can be very simple. So here, I'm gonna want to take these logs and turn them into sticks. I have to do that all the time. Maybe you have a log farm. Maybe you're trying to have some extra sticks. Their setup can be so simple, so simple. So all we have is one crafter, and its mouth is facing into the back of another crafter. And this crafter, I'm gonna set up so that it'll make the sticks perfectly. The first thing that I wanna do is make sure that I disable all these other slots. So we're gonna get planks, and remember the behavior of how our hoppers worked before? Well, as the crafter deposits its output into the crafter next to it, it's going to use that same type of logic. So you'll notice that as I activated it, it put the planks in the slots above and below. It made 4 planks, but how it distributed it was, first slot is at the top left-hand corner. I can't use that one, can't use that one. Second slot's right here. I still have 2. Can't use any of these, go back to the top, and so on. So that's how we got that distribution of blocks, and that will easily make sticks. So now I can just spam this, and what is happening is the logs are being converted into the planks. The planks are being set on top of each other, and then this is crafting the sticks. We do have a little bit of an issue that we may run into if we run this too much, and that is that from our logs, we get 4 planks, which means that we'll have to run the stick side twice in order to keep up with the logs production. But as long as you're not doing this too much, you won't run into an issue where you have too many planks, and it will continue to make the sticks. So this is a very, very simple way that you can chain together some of the crafters. Now, in this situation, let's get a bit more complicated. Let's make dispensers. Dispensers are horrible to craft because they require a bow in the crafting recipe. So in order to make the dispensers, we need cobblestone. We'll get 7 stacks of that. We will also need some redstone. Let's just get 1 stack of that. And then we want to make the bows, and that will require sticks. We'll get 3 stacks of that. And also the string, we'll get 3 stacks of that. So we are set up. We have the materials to make 64 dispensers. How are we going to make it? Well, the first step is to make the bows. So we're going to go over to this crafter. I'm going to put the sticks inside in the right orientation, in the right spot, and that will make a bow. So I'm going to go ahead and run this because this will make the bow. Now, right now, the bow is going to be spit out onto the floor. So actually, I'm going to go ahead and delete that. So you can see that it would get spit out onto the floor. We don't want that. So I'm actually going to pick up this crafter. All those items are going to go flying like that. And I'm actually going to break that one. And we are going to set down the crafter facing this direction, and then our output one will be facing that way. So this will input into this one. And so now let's remake that. Perfect. We have the bow. That is all made. We don't really need to disable these unless we wanted to put a hopper with a chest full of more sticks and more string above it. And we can use this method that we use with the sword for that if you want. Let's go ahead and activate this to get our first bow. So I turn that on and off. And we got our first bow made. Now we are going to make the rest of the dispenser. And this is always so frustrating because, here, I'm just going to go ahead and craft this one more time. Because bows don't stack. That's why dispensers are so difficult and frustrating to make. Bows don't stack. So now, in our current situation, it'll make a dispenser and it'll make a fresh bow every single time and add it to the crafter next to it. So now we have it so that as I hit this, it'll make the dispenser. The new bow has been made and already placed into the crafter for the next one. We're gonna turn that off, turn it back on. It makes the dispenser, it makes the bow, it places the bow, and now we can just run this 64 times and you can get 64 dispensers with fresh bows every time. Okay, so now that we've taken a look at some of the more basic things, I wanna cover something that I'm sure people are gonna be doing all the time, but does require a bit more advanced redstone. Compressing items down into blocks, right? You have all your iron ingots, you wanna make them into iron blocks, or maybe you have iron nuggets and you want to turn them into iron ingots. How do we do that effectively, automatically, and basically it just happens all the time? I'm going to show you how. So we're going to use some redstone to make sure that we get the timing right. What we want to have happen, right, is we want this crafter to, once it fills up with all of one item, so 9 items in its crafting table, we want a redstone signal to go off to cause this to activate. That is what we are hoping to do. We could probably use comparators to figure all of that out, and that is an option. So when we have a comparator comparing the output of a crafter, it will use either the slot being filled with an item as a redstone level that the comparator is outputting. So remember, these comparators kind of, they count sometimes what's going on inside of a block. So this will count up to 9. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then this redstone signal will go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That one's on. 10 is off because we only have 9 items full. So basically what we want to have happen is once it reaches 9, then this will craft. That'll pop out whatever is in there, and hopefully that'll just be an iron block. And we're good to go. The simplest way to do this is to take your redstone, and we're gonna place this here. This was the 9th one, so that would be the last one. And this is just gonna be like, oh my gosh, you know, this is a world's first redstone build. Don't care if it's good looking or not. And so in this situation, let's turn this all off. The moment that this gets filled with 9 items, this redstone will turn on, starting this repeater. The repeater will send it back over here, and it will go off. In practice, this is how it looks. We'll put a hopper at the top of this. We will fill this hopper with iron ingots. As it fills up with ingots, There you go. You can see that the redstone line is growing. And then as it gets all the way to the repeater, then it will fire off the repeater, firing off the crafter, and so it'll output a block. That's the simple version of this, but there's a more compact way to do it. So I want to show you how to do that. But basically, we're kind of using this as our foundation to continue our redstone. So instead of this long redstone line, what we want to do is actually use the subtract mode on the comparator. Comparators will be able to tell when a signal is larger or smaller based off of this subtract mode. So we want to send a signal into the side of this comparator that will be just one below the maximum, right? We want it to be a level of 8, and that will subtract it. That way, when it gets to 9, this will output the subtracted amount of that, which will just be 1. We just want the first redstone that it possibly can, that to be the output of that. That'll go into this block. This block will power this redstone. This redstone will come over here and power this repeater, and that repeater will then fire into this block, causing the crafter to go off. So we're gonna face it just in a different direction. Now we need a redstone level of 8. We need this comparator to notice that. So we could put down a chest. We could put down a whole bunch of things. I saw on Twitter, I think it was Silent Whisperer, he was using a composter. But I think the smartest option is just throw down another crafter and just click this in here 8 times, leaving that 9th one empty. And now that is the perfect amount of redstone signal. We got 8 going into here. That way, whenever this reaches to 9, so we can force that right now, 9, then we get a redstone signal over here. It will fire off into that block and try to make it crafting. With it off, it doesn't. By the way, this little redstone arrow, that'll light up whenever it is time to craft. So as I click that 9th one, you can see that it is trying to craft this recipe. So we can undo all of that. And now I'm going to add a chest full of iron, boop, like that. And this is just absolutely full of iron. And as this fills up with iron, then this will fire. You can see that little redstone signal. It'll fire out the block. So with this simple setup, we can craft as many blocks as we want. We can either use that sort of expanded redstone thing that we saw before, or we can use this comparator situation. And one thing I want to remind you is that this is in subtract mode, which means that you just have to click the top of it, okay? If it's not in subtract mode, it's not going to work. So once you put it into subtract mode, then it will work. So make sure that redstone lamp or that redstone torch on the top is lit. And there you have it, everything I know so far about the crafter. I hope that you enjoyed this video and that this has given you a great foundation to use the crafter in your world. Once again, I'm going to say this has been a development build, and I hope nothing changes, but if it does, obviously we're going to cover it. So make sure that you stay subscribed to the channel. Leave a comment down below letting me know what build you're going to make with the crafter. What item are you most excited about building with this? And I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!